So I got these little field books because sometimes I hear something like quote, I'm listening to something and I want to remember something. I pull out some quotes every now and then from the podcast that I listen to. It gives me some inspiration. I am a entrepreneur. I'm Black. It does take a lot of work. I'm constantly always thinking about how I can make the nonprofit more engaging for the community that we serve and to really put it out there what it is that we do and how we do it. So if you don't know, BLX is an organization. We are centering LGBTQ plus IA, Black and Brown folks in our community. Not to say that heterosexuals aren't welcome, but we like to center the kink, leather, BDSM community. There are plenty of other spaces for other communities. It's been my experience that there hasn't been, I don't want to say historically, but there hasn't been spaces just specifically for this kind of community. And granted, like everything, the larger community sometimes has the resources, the manpower and woman power, or the they power to do a thing, whereas Black and Brown, smaller organizations like BLX may not have. Historically, presenters in the kink BDSM leather community hasn't gotten paid. It's been my experience and some others that we haven't gotten paid for the labor that we do. We're trying to change that, and we may not be able to give an honorarium that is very large, but we do want to be able to pay presenters for their labor. The other part of BLX is where we take care of our wellness. I believe strongly that wellness is attached to art, any art form that you may have. And it doesn't have to be an expensive thing, although art can be very expensive. It is a privilege to have art supplies, but we make it, or we encourage you not to be caught up in the having of these supplies more so than it is getting a box of crayons and some construction paper and being in community and working on our mental health that way through art. Back to my book and me being a entrepreneur that is a Black woman, capital B, African American. So you know where I come from with the flavor of Blackness that I am. And like I said, I think constantly about what it is I can bring to our community, how it could be more engaging. And some of these quotes I write down, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit and give my opinion on some of them. And if I could remember where and who said it, I will. But a lot of times I don't remember who said what because I'm listening to the podcast and I'm just writing it down. So anyway, the first quote and or a quote that I just opened my book and saw is a closed hand can't give or receive, which is states what it is. If your hand is closed, you can't receive anything and you can't give anything. Interesting enough, I was talking to someone and they were talking about how someone in the community had the privilege and opportunity to have a legacy organization, but because they're so hard-headed and they won't take suggestions at all or criticism that's constructive or help, that we're really thinking that organization may not be around anymore, or a lot of people will get burned out and leave the organization. It's a legacy organization here in New York. And so this closed hand thing just reminded me of that. It's like their hand is closed, so they can't receive anything and they can't give anything. There's that. Another one is listening to a podcast. This quote came out. They were talking about, this entrepreneur was talking about putting all their eggs in one basket. And I think Rockefeller or Carnegie or one of these robber barons said, either you put all your eggs in a basket and you watch the basket, opposed to not putting all of your eggs in a basket. Let me rephrase that. They said, which one are you? Are you the put all your eggs in one basket, or are you don't put all of your eggs in one basket? And this person, this biographer said, I'm going to put all of my eggs in one basket and I'm going to watch the basket. I forget what biography this person was talking about, but the outcome was that they put everything in the basket and watched the basket. But the real question was, who owned the basket? So the person who owned the basket owned everything that they had put in their basket. So good thing to think about. Yeah. sometimes being an entrepreneur means that you may not own a thing that you wish you did own. So, for instance, some of what BLX does is that we have to, rather, we'd like to do things in person, but because we don't have a space, like a dedicated space for ourselves, we have to find ways of sharing space, like a shared space. Here in New York, we have the opportunity to have the center, which is fantastic. I have issues with that, but I'm going to say it's fantastic because we do have that privilege of having something like the center here in New York. The downside of that is that costs money, right? And so when you're trying to raise money while still spending money, that attitude of you have to spend money to make money sometimes is bullshit. But we do have that opportunity. So sometimes when you think about the basket, you have these things, but we always have to remember that we don't own the basket. And sometimes the basket is the space. And so we're beholden to the space. What else? Let me see what else is here, if I could read my writing. Oh, here's a quote. The founder's mentality is the idea that I, the founder, can start something that changes the world around me. And I think entrepreneurs I think entrepreneurs are the ones who think I can create a thing that's going to change the world around me. And just to throw it out there, so I'm going to say it. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates created this thing that changed the world, right? Changed the world around all of us, not only themselves, but around all of us. I'm not saying they did it all alone. They did have help and certain things that were in place that they had the opportunity to do that, even coming from like humble beginnings. And some people could say, I came from humble beginnings. And it's like, yeah, but you went to Harvard and Stanford. And that's cool. I'm not knocking that. Humble beginnings are humble beginnings. So anyway, that's a thing about founders, the mentality of changing. I know for myself, the reason why I obsess about BLX is because I do want to change at least a part of the world, some of the world that I occupy and that others like me occupy. I want to change that around me to make something better. It's not always about a party, although parties are a lot of fun. It is really about sometimes education and having deeper conversations that get to the heart and the heart of issues. BLX also is about having conversations around shame and guilt and sex and or sexuality or gender. Those issues, although people say we talk about that a lot, not really, not deeply. So anyway, there's that quote. Here's another quote. How you do one thing is how you do all things. I'm going to take a little pause with that. I don't have somebody who said that, so I don't know who said it. I don't remember when I heard that. But how you do one thing is how you do all things. So if you do one thing half-ass, most likely it is that you're going to do all things half-ass. But if you do things to the best of your ability, you may continue to do things to the best of your ability until you do it the best. Another quote is learn by doing. Learn by doing should be your process. So that's for real. I can identify with that because being an entrepreneur and doing something that I've never done before, right? It's like I have a mentor or someone guiding me. I'm like learning by doing, and that's a lot of my process. Where I'm learning by doing, and people are like, "You're going to make mistakes," and that's true. Every time I do something, I learn from it, and I try to be better the next time if I am afforded a next time. Sometimes you're not afforded a next time. It's easier to be the best small business than the best big business. Oh, I remember what I was listening to that podcast talking about being a small business. I think it might have been, I can't remember. I think it's a clothing company. And the person was saying that they don't advertise. They were like formed in like the 70s. They were like rock climbers and surfers and these kinds of things. And the founder was saying it's good to be a small business. It's easier to be the best small business than the best big business because small businesses, you can get a certain kind of service opposed to, he was given the example of when companies become big, their customer service becomes shit. And sometimes that is the case. But there are companies, I can't name any. That's not really true. There is a company, my internet company provider. I don't I have Starry, which is like internet. I got rid of the whole cable thing. I was like, I'm done with that. So I have internet. I have Starry. My internet is $45 a month, whereas before, and with the cable and the cable box and the this and the that, it was costing me almost $200 for one thing. I was in for that. But their customer service is really good, although they are a small-ish kind of company. I had to do something and I was on hold for 30 minutes. So there's that. But once I got someone, perfect. Anyway, moving on. Let's see what else I can talk about. Wonder what I got so far. This is good. I really should write down what biography I'm listening to on the podcast so that I can remember who said what. This quote, use the advantage of youth when you have it. Use the advantage of youth when you have them, and the advantage of age when you have those. I think what the person was saying is that young people don't realize that they have the advantage of youth because they're so busy trying to get this experience, but they have the advantage of youth and they should use that to their advantage, right? And then when they get older, and older people should use the advantage of age because it's just what it is. Everyone's going to age, right? And to imagine what can happen if you have someone who is using the advantage of youth along with someone working with someone who has the advantage of age, and how that kind of relationship could work. But person in the biography was just saying that basically it sounded like the youth is wasted on the young, which is like what they're saying, but I don't really believe that's what they're saying. They're saying that because you're young, you have this advantage, and then you'll have the advantage again when you get older. At least that's the way I'm taking it. And that's true because I wrote my notes. The benefits of youth is energy and time, freedom. Optimize the advantages of age. Oh, and the advantages of age is knowledge, efficiency, money, and power. The old also have the advantage of knowing which adventures, which can't even read my writing. Okay. The old also have the advantage of knowing which advantages they have. I really got to stop writing on the bus. The young often have it without realizing it. The young have no idea how rich they are in time. It's true. And that is true because when you're in youth, you don't realize, or sometimes you do. Sometimes you think, I have all the time in the world, but you really don't. But you often don't realize that you have the advantage or the richness of time. And it also depends on what youth you're talking about. I think this is, who was saying this? Again, I'm gonna say that to myself forever. Anyway, when something becomes a problem, have it removed as it takes away focus from what one is working on. And that is really true. Sometimes I've been accused of like being a robot or being stoic and these kinds of things. And it's, oh, you don't have empathy. I do have empathy, but sometimes some shit is just in the way of me to do a thing, and I have to remove it. I guess that says something about myself. Anyway, that's what I got so far. I'll come back and read some more. I have, like I said, this little book has several things written in it. I have my larger journal because I keep a journal of ideas, and I plan on putting them out, and hopefully I can see my progress as we move along.